and a variety of technologies, including large equipment. And so if you take the tomato as an example, just to understand how the whole system has evolved, the tomato harvester was a machine invented to go through the fields and harvest tomatoes, eliminating the labor that was necessary. Prior to the tomato harvester, gangs of tomato pickers would go through the field several times over the season and pick the ripe tomatoes. So not only do you have the tomato harvester wanting to go through once, but now you have to create a breed of tomato that ripens at once, that's firm, that can be picked by a machine, can be shaken off and dropped into a, and so you take a process that at one time in California had 4,000 tomato farms, down to 600 mega farms, and saved $5 to $7 a ton. But meanwhile, the product isn't the same product, doesn't have the same nutritional value, doesn't have the same taste. I mean, those of us who've...
But we get them in winter.
But we get them in winter, yeah. Actually, we get them in winter from Canada, which I think is really interesting. Yeah.
Jeff Heinen.
Well, a couple of things. I mean, again, because life is not very black or white, all those people who went through the fields 4 or 5 times were migrant workers who weren't paid, weren't treated well, if you believe, depending on where you are on that issue. And so life's not very black or white. And then when we, our buyers and all of our produce people just came back from Canada, and the Canadian tomatoes are grown in hothouses. They're organic, and 800 acres under roof. Is that bad? I can tell you these people are family farmers. It's under 800 acres. Is that too big? Is that too small? And part of the challenge is that the reality is Heinen's. We're 3% of the Cleveland food market, and we sell 40,000 pounds of tomatoes right now. Forget the summer when it will double or triple.
Mm-hmm. That's 40,000 pounds a week?
A week, I'm sorry, yes, 40,000 pounds a week. So the magnitude, right, and that's one of the things that, I mean, people, it's very romantic and it's great to say that I'm going to buy from someone who's on 10 acres. And farmers markets, restaurants have provided a great outlet for that, but by the same token is that you can grow great tomatoes on 800 acres.
And if I walk into Heinen's and you don't have any tomatoes, I go right to customer service and what's going on here?
Right. Exactly.
But that's the issue too. I think seasonality of food and not necessarily doing things out of season where, do people need tomatoes year round? Or, why don't you look forward to the summer when you get the best tomatoes and the best corn, and in the winter you focus more on things that are canned, or, you figure out how you can do it in the summer and use those things during the winter in a different way.
And what you're talking about, though, is a complete alteration, like a sea change in the way we understand food, which is, and part of it, and I don't know if you three are qualified to talk about this, but the government with the Farm Bill and the reason we grow so much corn and soy, Mary, is because it's subsidized, right. And that's what the Farm Bill pays for right now. Talk about that. I mean, is there a role for government in this? Because government's already involved, right?
Government's very much involved.
So if government's going to be involved, how should government be involved?
Well, that's a big question. We have
30 seconds.
The whole Farm Bill subsidy program is one that I personally think has again gone off track from the original design to keep farm prices stable. Have actually increased the amounts of corn and soybeans and the other products that are subsidized so that prices continue to fall, and you see this with milk and other commodities. That's a very tough role for government to play in terms of subsidies, but there are levels of government involvement at local level that have to do with food safety. There's a lot of food safety conversation going on in Washington and locally now because of the contamination, the E. coli, all the kind of stuff that every once in a while comes out of the industrial world. And a lot of that legislation is aimed at trying to control these big factory farms. But of course that makes it very, very difficult for the smaller farmer who is doing things right. That happens more on a local level with food safety regulations and inspections, that sort of thing.
And the community has to decide what they want. The farmer's market taught me how to buy food and what I wanted. And then I, in turn, am selling food, and now I have an understanding for it, and I'm teaching the customers that come to Fire how important it is to do this. And no matter how small I am, the more restaurants and the more the public's aware, they're going to change the government based on what they're asking for and what their community wants.
Jeff Heinen, do you see that pushback coming from your customers, that they're buying organic food at higher rates and they're buying the things that you're taking a chance on?
I mean, we do definitely believe that the sourcing of food is very important, and as an organization we spend a lot of time and energy to make sure we know where a lot of our product is grown, how it's raised, and we actually need to do a much better job of educating our customers about that. We try. We need to get better at it. And so, but there's no question customers are more interested in food safety, they're more interested in how their product is raised, and so we think it's great. I mean, we want, the more people who are concerned about where their food comes from, we think is better for us because we think we do it better than most.
Getting back to that question about government's role, do you see in terms of the farmers that you work with, that if government was subsidizing different products, I mean, if government was willing to change the dynamic in terms of how they work with farmers, how they subsidize our nation's food system, that would make a substantive difference? If they started saying we're not going to subsidize corn and soy as much as we do, and instead we're actually going to subsidize you for growing tomatoes or peppers or lettuce, what kind of difference would that make?
Well, everything follows money, and so. But I'm a fan of smaller government, and I'm a grocer, so I'm not qualified to answer the question.
I mean, I'm really curious. I'm not saying like a wholesale change, but what if it happened sort of incrementally, right? Or I mean.
Well, I agree with what I heard Doug say. As I think that people, the more educated they are, they'll drive the changes, and I think probably where I differ a little bit from Mary is that I don't think big is bad. I don't think because you're growing product on a larger farm means that you're doing it wrong. I think there's a place for both, and the reality is no one in the American world is willing to pay, and a lot of people cannot afford to pay $4 or $5.99 a pound for tomatoes. And so there's the trade-off of cost, but you can do it right and do it cost-effectively. But you need scale.
There is a difference between the price of tomatoes at Heinen's than at the farmer's market, that's for sure. Well, Jeff Heinen, Mary Holmes, Doug Katz, we're going to take a short break for Susan Alcorn to give us some City Club announcements.
Thank you. Today at the City Club, we are listening to a special program titled Local Food, Realities, Visions, and Next Steps. The featured panelists are Jeff Heinen of Heinen's Fine Foods, Mary Holmes, co-founder of North Union Farmers Market, and Case Western Reserve University Presidential Fellow, and Doug Katz, president of Cleveland Independent Restaurant Group and chef owner of Fire Food and Drink. Our moderator is Dan Moulthrop, host of WCPN's Sound of Ideas. Now we would like to return to our panelists and moderator for our traditional City Club question and answer period. Again, we welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding the microphones today are special committee members of the City Club, Ellie Sullivan and Mike Kallstrom. Thank you.
Let's go for the first question.